Welcome to my tutorial of Lucifer Ring, and this is a Japanese exclusive PlayStation 1 game. It wasn't released in the US or Europe. I don't think it got released anywhere else except Japan. It's a pretty solid, beat 'em up that I'm going to do a review on. I mean, it's not great or anything, don't get me wrong, but it's not bad. It's a decent little playthrough. It's quite easy as far as just if you're looking for a game to beat, that's easy to play through and just kind of enjoyable. It's pretty cool. It's not bad. Now, the art style does leave a lot to be desired. You know, it's got that fucking old 3D polygonal kind of look. And it looks a little generic, but I was impressed with the soundtrack, though, at a few points. It had a really catchy soundtrack on a few stages. That was kind of cool. And the gameplay, nothing too exciting, but I'm going to go over it. I didn't really need to make a tutorial for this game because it's pretty simple, but I thought a few of the boss fights could use a little bit of an explanation. I probably could have made a boss tutorial, but, some of these tutorials and playthroughs that I do are so obscure that, a straight-up boss tutorial for this game would probably be even more, a little bit more obscure. So I figured I would just, add the commentary over the whole game and give some general tips. I don't have a hell of a lot of advice for the game overall because I only beat the game once. It wasn't a refined playthrough, but I am going to do a review of the game too, so stay tuned for that in the future. So to start with, you have some very basic moves. I believe you can only choose this one character, but I probably should have been paying attention because, like I said, this was a game I put on and beat pretty quickly. If I remember right, I do have the completion time in my playthrough, but I believe it was under 2 hours. It might have been under maybe an hour and a half, an hour. It was a short game to beat. And that includes all the times that I died. Now, the way the game works is each time you get to a new area, usually, when you go to the next loading screen is the next checkpoint. I believe that's how it works. So you get your default 3 lives, and you have 3 lives to beat that screen before it goes to the next checkpoint. So it's very lenient. So, you know what I'm saying? Even if you have unlimited continue, so even if you do exhaust your lives in the next screen, you'll likely start pretty close to where you died. And as far as the bosses go, usually you start right at the boss fights. So it is very forgiving. Though there is a few good strategies for some of the bosses, but I don't think anyone's going to have too much trouble with it. The fact that you start at the bosses and have several lives to defeat the bosses. You have running attacks, so if you double tap in a direction, you can you can dash, and then you can hit the attack button to do a lunging sword strike. It's good for crowd control, but it's not super useful. But it will get guys off your ass, but it doesn't do much damage. And you have a regular strike, then you have a strong strike, which is slower. And it usually has some flips mixed into it, which are kind of good because sometimes it seems like you can avoid damage by spamming it, which I'll show later. And then I believe the triangle button, all the attacks are on the face buttons from what I remember, and then the triangle button is your power attack, which doesn't really seem to waste or cause you any health when you use it. I don't know if it drains your health when you use it. It seems like you can spam it. But when that SP bar fills up, that green bar that says SP, if you press triangle, then you'll do your power move. You want to try to save those for bosses and shit like that, but it's not a huge consequence if you use it on enemies because, you'll probably get the checkpoint soon anyway, and if you die, you can just continue, and you'll build the meter back up. But it is good to try to bring it to the bosses if you can and get that first power attack in, because then you can build up more meter as the boss fights progress, and you'll maybe be able to get an extra super attack in by bringing a full meter into the fight. So it can be good. Though don't be too concerned with saving it, with being super, strict with trying to save it. Unless you're trying to do a 1cc run or some kind of challenge run, don't worry about that. The game, like I said, you don't need to be super, super concerned about that. So mostly you're going to be mashing through very simple enemies. Most of the enemies are very simple. They do get a little bit more advanced later in the game, but not by much. So you pretty much have your 3 attacks. You have your super move, which if your meter's not full, he just does like a spin, which knocks guys away. It's good for getting guys off you. You have a dashing attack. You have a strong attack, which is slow, and a regular attack, and that's about it. So a very simple game. You can also do jump attacks, but I really never use them. Almost never. I didn't find them to really be useful. I mean, you can see I'm using them occasionally, but I mean, I could have done without them. Most of the time, you're just going to be mashing the button in the direction of the enemy, so it's usually pretty fucking simple. Even the flying enemies, you know, in most beat-em-ups, you'd have to jump to attack them. A lot of times in this game, with flying enemies, you can just stand on the ground and sling your sword. And you'll connect with them for whatever reason. These guys are a little bit more aggressive, but it's easy enough to spam your way through this without much skill. The last boss can be a little tricky. It took me a few tries. There's some positioning tricks though that make it a lot easier, which I'll detail. And I think there's one other boss fight that can be a little challenging, but there's really nothing in the game that's that challenging. And this is the edited version, so I removed, you know, any unsuccessful continues. You know, I show deaths, but if I went out to the continue screen and didn't make any new progress as far as getting to the next area, then that whole continue would be edited out for the tutorial. I do have a playthrough up that has you know, less editing in it, but I don't know if I posted a fully unedited playthrough of this game, but this one's edited down a little bit more. So for the tree, if you want, I mean, you don't even have to play it that carefully, but if you want to, you can dodge when it swings. You probably want to dodge it occasionally. I was pretty sloppy with it, just playing aggressively, but, you know, you can dodge it. So this is the super move. If you hit triangle when you have a full SP bar, that does the most damage. And there's also actually, there's different sword pickups you can get, like a flaming sword, an electric sword, shit like that. And there's one near the end of the game that you're definitely going to want. But some of those are good to get because they'll make your sword attacks more powerful, and it makes your super attack way more powerful too. So I believe you get different super attack depending on what type of sword you're holding. You can only hold one at a time. So now I'm sure if you know the game, you may... There may be a best sword to have for each situation, but you only get them every so often. So, I mean, unless you really know the game, you're going to be better off getting an electric or a fire sword over your base sword, most likely. So, at least get one of them. And towards the end of the game, I'll give a specific recommendation. I think it's kind of hard to miss near the end of the game anyway, but it's worth getting. Sometimes you get items and shit out of the crates, like the sword power-ups and things like that. Occasionally you'll get some health back or a 1-up. So here's the next screen, which is definitely a checkpoint. I believe the dragon is coming up soon, in a little while. That's the first main boss. The game has that classic style of, you know, gating you in until you defeat all the enemies most of the time. I think there's a few areas, if I remember right, where I was able to run past all the enemies and, like, skip through. Which I'll show. But, you know, as you can see, most of the enemies are pretty simple. It's just a matter of striking them before they strike you. It's a pretty damn simple beat-em-up. But it's kind of fun if you're just looking for a simple beat-em-up just to mash your way through and just a game to beat. Then it can be kind of fun. But it's definitely not a standout beat-em-up or anything. It's not like, you know, you're missing out if you don't play this. But as someone who likes to go through a huge volume of games, you know, I go through a mass volume of games. I like playing games of different styles and difficulties, you know, and I really enjoy filling out the kill list. I sometimes enjoy that more than actually playing some of the games that I play. I enjoy the completion of getting them on that fucking kill list. You know, I like accumulating them on my little games beaten list. So I kind of make my own entertainment with that, and I sometimes enjoy games more than I normally would because of that. So this is the first main boss, and this is not going to be difficult. You get a checkpoint right here. So if you lose all your lives here, you'll just continue with all your lives back magically. So The main thing with this guy is just to get some strikes in and then just retreat. Because, it takes a long time for him to wind up for most of his attacks. So you got plenty of time. Just back off when you see that aura coming out from under him. He's going to, lift off the ground. So, let him drop back down and then attack him again. And occasionally he will do a little attack. And I probably would have used my power attacks more. It probably would have been faster. But I was still learning some of the basics. But you can spam the power attacks and you'll probably do a lot more damage than I'm doing here. You may even build up your SP meter a lot more by using those slow power attacks. And when I say slow attacks, I'm not talking about the triangle move, which is usually your power move if your bar is full. If it's not full, then you'll do a spin move. That's good to knock guys away. But I'm talking about the slower, I believe it's either square or circle. Now, normally I'm not really using a PlayStation controller, so it doesn't always stand out what buttons I used since I'm playing on an emulator. I also probably beat this over a week ago, so I didn't get a chance to do a commentary right away on it. So it's a little hazy. Before I mention that you can double tap in any direction to run, I believe there's also a button you can hold down to run, which is a much better way to do it. So instead of having to keep tapping all the time. Now this game I was playing with a D-pad. I don't know that this game has analog control. I think it might just be a D-pad game, as a lot of PlayStation 1 games were. So, it plays fine with a D-pad. You see how much damage that fully charged move does. Remember, you build up your meter by attacking. So, keep an eye on it. When it gets full, just use it. There's no need to save it, especially on bosses, because you'll beat the boss and get your next checkpoint. But this guy's very simple. I played it sloppy. I think I beat it very quickly, so I didn't have a lot of practice on this, but that just shows how easy it was. There wasn't much to it. But it is kind of a fun game to kind of bust through. I do like these kind of games sometimes. It's just a fun little game. I know it's not the best game, but a lot of times in the past, I would end up with shitty games because, information kind of sucked back in the 90s, with magazines and shit. And they were, a lot of companies were fucking paid off and shit to give good reviews, or some incentive to give good reviews, and you get a lot of bad recommendations. So this would have been a solid game if I would have owned this for PlayStation. I wouldn't have been, at least irritated that I got a shitty game. Though I probably would have returned this back in the day. There was a period with PlayStation 1 when it first came out where, I had almost no money to work with, but when I did buy a game, I would just buy the fucking game and then, play it. I'd be like, shit, fuck this, return it. And I sampled a bunch of games at Babbage's at the time. It was a computer store, and I sampled, I did a bunch of fucking returns. Because, there was no other way for me to try these games at the time. And, when you're spending $50 and you're not going to get that money again for a long-ass time, it could be many months, I was a lot more particular about what game I wanted to keep. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I could beat it and then sell it on eBay or anything like that. There was, no eBay that I knew about or anything back then. So it was just a different time. So yeah, I probably would have sold this, but I was looking for the fucking, pinnacle of games for $50 back then at that time. Because I just didn't have, fucking money to waste on something that wasn't going to last me more than a few hours. So this is very simple. These guys look different and they act a little different, but you're basically doing the same shit of mashing the button, basic crowd control. If you get surrounded, maybe hit triangle if you don't have a full meter and just do your spin to get them off of you. I wouldn't recommend wasting your full-on power move on these guys, but you can if you want, because like I said, there's checkpoints. Every new screen basically is a checkpoint, so, as long as you don't mind continuing a bunch of times, you don't really have to worry about it. Really, the only parts of the game you need to learn are the final boss and maybe one other boss fight. May take a little bit of practice, but aside from that, you can pretty much just sloppily bust through most of the game. It's that fucking easy. Now, I believe some larger enemies are going to show up soon, and I didn't realize that I could actually attack them at one point. Not this elephant guy, though. You can beat the shit out of this guy. Just smack him around. Maybe do some of those slower strikes, more powerful strikes. I wasn't using those as much as I should have by this point in the game. They are really useful. You know, I just kind of learned as I got farther in the game. But, you know, it's not like I ever became good at the game or anything. I just bullshitted my way through. This is not a game that I would consider, you know, good enough to want to do a 1cc or do any kind of challenge run or anything. Not that I do those that often, but this is not a game that would inspire me to do it. But I still thought it was fun. But it is pretty repetitive. But it's not like it's super long either. You're not going to be mashing buttons for 3 hours or anything like that, you know. Unless you're dying a lot. You know, not getting to the next screen. But you really shouldn't. There's really very little to this game. It's cool to see some 3D beat 'em ups. I mean, because you don't really see them anymore in modern fucking times. You know, it's so rare. I mean, I don't really consider Ninja Gaiden Black a 3D beat 'em up. You know, I mean, I always look at it as like a hack and slash game, but they are, you know, games like God of War are kind of like 3D beat 'em ups. You know, I mean, you just have weapons. That's the main difference. But when you think about it, they are 3D beat 'em ups, I guess. But you don't even get a ton of hack and slash games anymore, like 3D hack and slash. Like, you know, we got God of War coming out, which is going to be fucking amazing, I'm sure. Looking forward to doing a run of the hardest mode on that. I don't know yet if I'm going to do a tutorial on that one, maybe. But these modern game tutorials, you know, they don't get very many views either. And well, most of my videos don't. But I mean, you know, the amount of time it takes to edit and put together a tutorial for those modes is, you know, probably almost as much time as it takes for me to beat the mode itself. I mean, it takes a while to put it together. But if I get some feedback, you know, let me know if you're interested in that, and I'll definitely take that into consideration. I do have a tutorial for God of War 2018 on the hardest difficulty setting and a bunch of other extreme modes and things like that. I have a lot of them on the channel. Most of my tutorials are usually with older games because, you know, once you learn an old game, it might only be an hour long or 30 minutes long, and it's easy enough for me to put a voiceover on it. But now when you're talking about games that are, you know, 20, 30 hours, that's a lot of vocals, you know what I mean? So what I would do is I would edit it down to the combat only, basically, where I only show combat scenes. And then I would put the voice over it, but you're still talking about, you know, a good amount of, it's still hours of voice that has to be recorded and everything, so editing and all that shit. I probably will edit it, though. Most likely I'll have an edited playthrough of it. I just don't know yet if I'm going to do a tutorial. But yeah, the only thing that's changed so far is now you have this big asshole running around. Now, initially, I thought that I would have to run around and try to avoid him while taking the enemies out. But then when I realized, you know, no more enemies were showing up, then I guess I figured I had to kill him. But I wasn't looking at his life bar initially. I was just looking at the strikes, and it looked like they were bouncing off of him. It doesn't look like really like he's taking damage, because he's not really reacting or anything. But he does take damage. All you got to do is just hit him enough times and he'll die. And if you want to use a special here, go for it. It'll just save you time because these guys just take really long. And sometimes it's better to exhaust your special moves if you just don't want to be bothered with waiting around. Because you could just, you know, you could always suicide in the next area, or just, you know, I never committed suicide intentionally, but sometimes I wouldn't have that much health and I would just die anyway in the next screen. So it didn't matter because I already got the checkpoint. So, you know, this game is pretty fucking relaxed. I mean, you can take this shit really easy and just chill out. You don't have to get intense with this game. And there'll be a few strats that I'll explain. That should make the last boss easy once you understand what's going on. There's a whole method to it to take it out pretty easily that I found. So yeah, these guys are basically just very slow enemies that are basically bullet sponges. That, you know, or if you want to call them sword sponges, but they just take a lot of fucking hits. That's all it is. But they're super easy. Now I got some potion here. That might have been a temporary invincibility, or maybe it gave me health back. I'm not even sure. You know, most of the time I wasn't really paying attention to the shit that I grabbed. I would just, you know, if I saw an item, I would usually fucking grab it without much thought. I mean, the game was pretty mindless, so I wasn't like super, you know, attentive to what was going on with the items. You'll see I save state a lot, and part of that is in case I need to practice a part, or sometimes on these emulators you have games completely glitch out, so I try to make saves to cover my ass. You know, if it does glitch out, I can always reload the save and, commit suicide, go back to the continue screen, and then at least I'm back. I'm legitimately back to wherever I left off at, for the most part. So, as far as power outages, I usually have that covered with a battery backup on all my systems and PCs and shit. So, if the power does go out, usually my consoles don't shut off. That's one way I kind of cover my ass. Same with the recording. My PC I used to record everything through the AverMedia LGP. I have that connected to a battery backup too, so I don't lose recordings usually from that. But, emulators can be unstable, so you will see me save a lot in my playthroughs of games as an extra backup. And if I need to practice a specific part, I may reload. As long as I can do it in a legitimate type of way. I don't use it ever to give myself an advantage or to, like now these modern games, a lot of them, when they release these retro games now on modern consoles, they give you the feature to rewind the game, save states and all this stuff. And it seems like it's intended to abuse it just so you can beat the game in a cheap way. But yeah, I never do that. This shit is very easy, though. This is why I haven't said much about this fight. I mean, basically, you just have to kill these two guys. So, target whichever one you want, really. And when your bar gets charged up, just use your super move, and it does really nice damage. They're very easy to finish off. I mean, you'll get a checkpoint right here. Use your slow attacks. They do a lot of damage. And, yeah, just mash, basically. You may get hit a few times, because the enemies will kind of sandwich you a little bit, but it's pretty damn easy. So, yeah, you got some lasers. I played this shit really sloppy. I just kept running. I didn't even try to dodge the shit. I ran. I did a few jumps. I mean, I didn't really care if I got, fucked up here. Because you even get checkpoints even in those laser rooms, I believe. So it's like super fucking lenient with the checkpoints. So I'm pretty sure if you died in that laser room, I think you would get a checkpoint in that room, I believe. But I didn't get a chance to test it in that particular room. So now you have your first real platforming. But, it's easy enough. It's a little awkward, but once you know where to stand, it's not too strict. I mean, so you can fuck up, but eventually you'll learn where to stand. If an enemy is in the way, you may want to slice at it and take it out, but you don't really have. You can pretty much ignore the enemies in here and just jump to the next area. You can get that treasure chest if you want it. I don't even know what was in it. And that's it. It's a pretty simple platforming section. You might fall a few times. But again, you have all your lives anyway, so you're probably not going to lose all your lives on that. So again, another laser room, and I believe I just tried to run through it again without really paying too much attention. The strange thing is, though, the lasers only seem to come out when you're in front of them. I'm sure there's a way to dodge them. I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I didn't spend enough time on it to try to learn what was going on. I was just being real fucking sloppy, just trying to haul ass, skip everything. I think this is one of the areas where you can run through all the lasers and enemies and just, totally skip the whole area. So I recommend doing that. So yeah, this is the first, kind of tricky boss. But you do get a checkpoint here where you get all 3 of your lives to use on the boss, so... you'll have plenty of opportunities. But this is a 2-phase fight. So for the first phase, this first little humanoid form, you can pull a lot of bullshit. If you get your distance just right and mash the regular attack, he won't really be able to get through it too easily. You'll see it in a little while when I get in a rhythm. So you get your range just right, and you can get a lot of hits in. I mean, of course, he's getting hits on me now, but you'll see me get in a nice rhythm where he cannot really do much. You got to get your standing range, just right, pretty much, and mash the button. If you do it right, you can pull a lot of bullshit. See, it has a really long range, your attack, and he has trouble trying to get through that. You can use the run attacks occasionally to kind of knock him back, but you don't really need to. You can hit him through that barrier as well, as you see me doing. It doesn't. I mean, it makes it a little bit harder to reach him, but you can still pull a lot of bullshit through the barrier. It doesn't matter too much. And that's pretty much my strategy for this. Is just I keep about a mid-range and just keep mashing the button. And I try to spam them in that combo pretty much. There might be a way to lock him in completely where he can't hit you at all and you might be able to combo him to death, but I never got it that good because usually the projectile would come through. But, you know, I took minimal damage that way, so once you get your power meter charged up, you know, you can cash that in and speed up the fight a little bit. Or you can save it for the second form, depending how your health is. You may want to save it for the second form if your health is good. I mean, I could have saved it for the second form, but I wasn't too concerned. So now is the second form after he goes down. And this is the final form of this boss. So for this, I mostly use the slow attack that kind of somersaults. It's not the triangle attack, but it's your slower attack. I pretty much spammed that. I just kept spamming it, and then when my meter got full, I would just unleash that. So that's all I really did. Very easy. And this is one of the hardest bosses in the game, so clearly there's not a lot of challenge in this game. So see, I keep spamming my slower attack where the guy does the flip. So I'm just mashing that when I can get it in. I barely even tried to really dodge anything. I was just going up to him and mashing him since I had a bunch of lives to burn. You know, I had still a few lives left, like maybe 3 lives when I got to this guy. I didn't die on the first form, so just spam this shit, that's all. And like I said, when the meter fills up, just use it, but don't worry about dodging. You can just spam this one move. It does pretty good damage. And as soon as the meter is full, I get close to him and use it. I don't know if you need to be close to him, but I just do it in case, you know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's really simple. You get a few super meter full charges too, which does a ton of damage. So yeah, that's it for this boss. And then after this, the only other challenging boss that's a little bit challenging is going to be the final boss. And, you know, that's easy, too, when you know what to do. So now we are in this cave area. It's a lot of the same shit again. You know, the enemies may look different, but your strategies don't really change much in this game. It's basically just line the enemies up. If you get surrounded, you know, you might want to hit a triangle to do a spin attack. Or use your running attacks to knock guys back and group them together, but it's very simple. You can see it's a pretty repetitive game. There's really not a lot to it. But luckily it's not that long, so it's kind of easy enough to just go through in a single sitting. So now you have a scorpion, kind of a new enemy, but it's just another large enemy you can go up to and just beat this shit out of, pretty much. So, I mean, the new enemy types and shit like that don't really make much of a difference. I mean, I wasn't playing it carefully at all. I'd just go up to it and just pretty much mash the attack buttons. So some of the treasure chests are kind of like Dark Souls style mimics, you know, where they attack you. But this one gave me a 1-up at least. I think that may always be there. I don't think that's random, that particular chest. Some of the chests I think may be random. Not completely sure about that. Now here I tried to get this chest up here. which I think was basically just a waste. I don't even think there was anything good in there, if I remember right. Yeah, some bullshit. It might have been like a health item or some bullshit, which, I lost a ton of health trying to get that fucking thing. But you never know. It could be a good sword or some shit. And if you do die and continue, I believe you keep your powered up sword. So it is worth checking those chests just to make sure you're not missing a really good weapon. But see, this is a really good weapon, and I just got it in this area. So luckily it was in here. I believe this one does more damage. One benefit of it, though, is that if you do your power move, I think you get a much more powerful super move when you hit triangle when it's charged up. So that's going to do a lot more damage to bosses. So you always want to have anything except for the base sword. If you can get a flaming sword or like an electric sword like this, at least get one of them. I couldn't really decide which one was best, and I think maybe certain swords are better for different element type of enemies, maybe, So I'm not sure if there's one best sword for the entire game. But I think any of the swords are better than the base sword, like just keeping the default sword. Strangely enough, though, you can actually pick up a power-up that gives you a default base sword, and I don't know what the point of that is. I don't know why you'd want to downgrade to the base sword. I'm not sure what the advantage would be. There's probably something about the game that I don't really understand. I mean, like I said, it was a quick kill, so I didn't get deep with it, or I didn't read up an instruction manual or anything like that. I just played it. But yeah, more simple enemies. The flying enemies are kind of pointless in this game because most of the time you can just stand on the ground and swing at them. So it kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a flying enemy when all you have to do is face it and swing for the most part. I think there was a few birds or some shit in the game where I might jump and attack them or something, but almost never. So I don't even know if I had to do that. I probably could have just stayed on the ground. So here you got a 1-up and some other shit. You got a base sword pickup. I don't know why you'd want that. I think I got it because I thought maybe it's powering up my sword in some other way, but I actually regretted picking it up because I think it just made my sword weaker. So if you see that, I would recommend not picking that up. Keep either the electric or the fire sword, but don't pick up the regular sword pickup. But when you don't know how the power-ups work, I thought maybe, if I collect enough of them, maybe it'll power it up or do some other shit, I mean, I kind of assumed it was going to downgrade me, though, too. I kind of knew before I picked it up, I figured. But I just tried it. So now I believe this is a stage boss, and it's super easy from what I remember. I think I beat it on the first try or close to it. So yeah, if you have any super attacks, obviously use them. See how much damage that shit does with that. Well, actually, that's not even with the good sword. Probably would have got more damage if I had that electric sword, but either way, it does like a quarter of the boss's health. Because the boss has 2 health bars, so you got to take that into account. But it does huge damage, and the SP meter was charging up pretty quick for whatever reason. It seems. I don't know if that's because of the sword pickup I got or like what caused that, but it seems to charge up fast for this guy, like really fast. But that's it. I mean, it was over pretty quick. So now this is pretty far into the game. There's only about 17 minutes left, so it's not much left. There might be 2 stages left. I'm not exactly sure. It has been a little while. But I think this is kind of like a church graveyard kind of stage. Kind of a cool stage. The zombies are extremely easy. They're even easier than most of the enemies that you've been facing. I mean, they're super slow. So, I believe there is a really good sword pickup in here somewhere, though. That's a 1-up. And again, I don't remember if the chests are randomized or if they're always the same items. I think there was some random elements to it, to some of them at least. But some of them, I think a few of the chests may have fixed items like 1-ups. They may always have that one item, but most of the chests may be random. That's what I think it is, but I don't really remember. And I didn't pay a hell of a lot of attention to that. I guess the crystal ball looks like it powers up your SP meter to full, which is a decent little power up. Get that flaming sword, though. Definitely get this sword. Because I think it did a lot of damage to the final boss when you use the super move. So regardless of what sword you have, I recommend getting this one. Because I can confirm that this sword works great on the final boss. I didn't test out the electric sword, so I can't really say what how well that is. But I know that this made the last boss easy when I knew what to do. So at least I can confirm that. And it's very easy to get. Most likely that sword is going to be there as a fixed item. I don't think that would be random, but I could be wrong. Like I said, I didn't play these areas a second time most of the time. Most of the time I beat them pretty quick. So I didn't have to continue on most of the areas. I think I only used a few continues maybe for the whole game. I don't think it happened that often. It does seem to do more damage than the regular sword for sure, but these enemies are pretty damn easy. These enemies can be a little irritating. They throw shit at you pretty much. This area is a little bit more open than usual, but all you have to do is run around and kill all these guys throwing shit. On the bottom right, there's actually an enemy counter that tells you how many enemies are left. I don't even know if I noticed that when I was playing the game. Like I said, the game was so fucking easy. I'm not sure if I was even looking at that. Maybe, but yeah, so I guess if you kill about 10 of these spear throwing guys, you'll be able to exit this area. I'm pretty sure you're gated in here until you kill all the enemies. And it's pretty much just run around and take them out as you see them. They are a little bit irritating because they keep throwing shit at you, and you don't have the best movement in this game, so it's a little irritating, but this is probably a checkpoint, so you'd probably get to start here anyway if you died. So there's not a hell of a lot of consequences in this game, really. The running attacks can be good in this area sometimes just to keep the guys back a little bit, but it is difficult to avoid getting hit. It doesn't feel like the cleanest movement to dodge shit. It's not like you have a dodge button or anything like that I'm aware of. So, you got to kind of just not be in the area where they throw shit. So yeah, after you clear out the enemies, you'll go on to the next area. This might be a little boss fight in here. I'm not sure. Okay, yeah, I think this was a super easy boss that I beat the first time I got to it. I think it's super fucking easy. You can see it's pretty much like a mini boss. It only has one health bar, I think. And it's already half dead, so that super move does do a lot of damage to it. It seems like the power attacks don't really work on this guy, at least the slower power attack. It seems like you're better off just mashing the sword. Just the regular base strike, the regular strike. Just keep mashing it. Maybe move every once in a while. I mean, he really telegraphs when he's going to strike. So just, walk to the side or some shit. Should be able to avoid it. You could probably just mash through this whole fight for the most part. It's really easy. Yeah, I think he might be immune to the slower, more powerful hits, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. But it doesn't seem to be hitting him when I was doing it. Now, I'm not sure if the checkpoint is after you beat this boss, because I think you still remain in this room and fight some enemies. See, there's some enemies up here. So, I don't know that you'll actually get a checkpoint after that boss, so try not to die on the ghosts. Just try to take them out aggressively. But, I mean, worst case, you'll start back probably at that boss again, and you'll have 3 lives, so you'll easily be able to bust through. And since I was down to 0 lives, I mean, I could have even used my super move, but I mean, that level was already pretty. That area is like done. So I believe there's some more ghosts in here. You might even be able to run past them, but maybe not. No, I think you have to kill them. There's not a hell of a lot of areas in this game where you can just run past all the enemies. You know, even in God Hand, when I played through the hard mode on that, I was surprised how many areas where you could actually just run past all the enemies. There was actually quite a few. But in this game, you know, most of the areas are gated in, and you have to kill a certain amount of enemies. It's strange, though, because sometimes the invisible wall really is invisible, whereas most of the time there's a red, translucent kind of barrier where you can see where the barrier is, but sometimes it just won't let you go any farther. But very easy. Pretty much just fighting fucking Slimers from Ghostbusters. Speaking of fucking Ghostbusters, you might want to check out my tutorial. The NES version of Ghostbusters pretty much exploited every screen. It's really not that hard if you exploit everything. But it's a really shitty game. Might be an entertaining tutorial to check out. Much more entertaining than this fucking tutorial. This was like really kind of easy, kind of generic game. There's really not much to explain. You know, that this really doesn't need a tutorial. But I figured I would bang it out. Try to add a little feedback to it. Maybe make it a little bit more entertaining. But there's really not much to say about this game. Occasionally I'll make tutorials for easy games, though, you know, every once in a while. Just to make a video that some might find entertaining. It's also kind of cool just to, you know, to revisit these videos, see where my mind was at. This guy is pretty fucking easy, too. It's really not that hard. It's better to have all your lives for this guy because he's a little tricky. But I mean, what I did was I was mainly, I believe, mashing my my slow attacks. You know, it's a more powerful slow attack. I was mainly mashing that. And, you know, whenever I had my power meter, I just used it. So it doesn't really get much easier than that. I don't remember there being much strategy to this. Now, there's a good chance you won't beat this guy when you first get in this room because you may not have all your lives. But once you continue here, you'll continue right at the boss. And with 3 lives, it's really easy. If all you do is just spam your power attacks. And you really don't have to do much else. Just keep spamming it, build up your bar, and then just unleash the fully powered attack. Hopefully you got the flame sword, though, too. That does seem to do more damage. At least on the final boss, it seemed to do a lot of damage. Though I can't confirm what the other weapons would do on the final boss, since I only got there with the flame sword. But it was good, so it's probably good to get. I was definitely cutting it close, but it wasn't a big deal, like I said, because I could just start this area over with all my lives. So, you know, you can just play sloppy like I did. I don't even know how to dodge a lot of that shit. I mean, I would have to play for a while to learn all the patterns and shit. I can't even tell you how to dodge it. Because all I did was bum rush the fucking boss. You know, I went all out. Trading hits. So that's it for this boss. I don't think there's another form to this. I think this is it. And I believe next is the final stage. And the final stage really isn't difficult. It's just that the last boss might be a little bit tricky. But it's not going to be hard after you see the video. I believe there's more platforming in this stage. I think it's a little heavier on the platforming, but you get so many fucking checkpoints. You know, you'll probably have a checkpoint in the next screen or whatever, so, you know, it shouldn't be too hard. Mainly what I did was ignore the weapons and just try to line myself up and make the jumps. They are easy jumps. You know, they're not the best control. You might walk off a few times. It doesn't feel super responsive with the platforming, but, you know, it's passable. I mean, luckily this wasn't a fucking platforming game where it might be really shitty, but there's only a few parts like this. So now you have to kill these enemies before you can go to the next area. You can see a lot of times you really don't need to bother with jump attacks at all. I mean, maybe occasionally you want to do it, but for the most part the enemies will just come down to you. Or your sword has such a huge range, it has like this huge like vertical range where it's like it hits like way above you. It's kind of weird, but it works. You might have a few enemies that kind of just hang around. You may want to jump to damage them. And that's it for this section. Now you should be on the next checkpoint. Very easy. The birds can sometimes knock you into the pits. So, I mean, there's a little bit of a danger of that. I don't know if you even die when you fall in the pit. You may just lose health. Okay, so actually I got that sword here. It's another type of glowing sword. It wasn't actually... It looked like it was going to be just the weak base weapon, but it's actually a different sword. I would recommend getting that because that's probably what I used on the final boss. So that one may be really good to get. I thought that I had used the flame sword, but I just didn't remember because it's been, it's probably been like a week. So this is the same boss you fought, but it's only in one form now. So all you got to do is defeat the human form of that previous boss. Same strategy here. Just keep that little mid-range and just keep swinging at him, and he'll end up getting caught up in your sword strikes a lot. I don't know if there's a way to infinite combo this guy, like get him in a loop permanently. I mean, that would be cool, but I don't know. I was never able to do that. But you really don't need to. So soon, I believe the final boss comes up very soon now. Maybe in the next screen or something like that. And for the final boss, I'll have a very specific strategy and positioning. Order of things to do and all that kind of shit. And it should make it easy. So I'll detail that. I think this is the final boss. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So first thing you want to do on the final boss is you're going to jump to the platforms and destroy the 4 little crystals on the platforms. But the last one, you want to destroy the one in the upper left last. So do it in an order to where you'll destroy the upper left one last. So it puts you in a position to hit the boss when it's time. So, I'd recommend destroying them in the order that you see me doing, but make sure you save the upper left one as the last one, whichever order you decide to do it. And to get on these platforms, it's very simple. As long as you're lined up, you only have to make a jump either left or right, depending which one you're going on. It's a very simple platform. I recommend using the regular attacks. I tried strong attacks on the crystals, but it seemed harder to land, and it didn't seem to save me any time, really. So just mash the regular attacks for those. Now take this upper right crystal out. Just ignore the boss's attacks. It doesn't matter if you fall in a hole occasionally, but just ignore it. And just keep swinging on the crystals. And now go to that upper left crystal, and that's going to be the last one to take out before the boss becomes vulnerable. So while you're doing this, you're also powering up your special meter as well to the max. So take that out. So now stay on this platform and just start swinging on the boss. Just keep swinging with regular attacks. Don't try to do anything fancy. Just regular attacks, and in a little while, you're going to use your special move as well. See, when he rears up like that, I just used his special because I wasn't sure if he was going to do some kind of weird attack or some shit. So I just used my special. Look how much damage that shit did with that sword that I picked up on that platform. So that's why I say get that sword, because it may do a lot of extra damage. So now get off of these platforms if you can safely do it. I mean, it's still kind of irritating with the controls and shit in the camera, but... And as soon as you can, just get up in the boss's face again and swing on him. And as soon as your special meter fills up, as long as you have the sword that I have here, you will annihilate him on your second use of that special. So even though it's cutting it close, it's a very easy fight when you play it like aggressively. So use this, and I think this completely annihilates the boss. Yeah, see, he's dead. So that was it. It's very easy if you do everything in that order, and especially I think if you have the sword that I had, I think that makes it even easier. I'm not sure how much more damage it would take to take him out with the weaker swords or the other variations, but I can confirm that one takes him out pretty easily. Yeah, and that's it. Pretty simple game, but not too bad. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.